So how to tell if you're hearing the voice of God or if you're hearing the enemy's voice? Oftentimes when you're trying to make a decision, trying to lean on wisdom, obviously, and not your own understanding, it can be difficult to discern and understand if it's God's voice we're listening to or the enemy's voice, because again, the enemy is also trying to keep us from the will of God. So here are some ways that you might be able to get perspective as to whether or not it's God's voice or the enemy's voice. Now, these aren't all the ways, but these are some of the ways that I've seen, some of the ways I've found that God speaks. And so God's voice normally is a calming voice. If you're finding that the voice you're listening to is always making you upset, it's probably not God's voice, it's probably the enemy's voice. God's voice comforts us versus the enemy's voice brings fear to us. It causes us to worry. It makes us, make decisions out of fear instead of faith. God's voice will convict us. It will convict us to change. It will convict us to grow. But the enemy's voice will condemn us and lie to us and tell us we're not worthy anymore of God's love, of God's grace, of His mercy. And that is a lie. The voice of God will encourage us, whereas the enemy's voice will consistently discourage us. Have you ever felt just consistently discouraged and boggled down and just weighted by, just this discouragement? That is not from God. The enemy it's just that's where he makes his bread and butter, is by trying to keep you discouraged and keep you out of purpose. God's voice will also lead us, and God is so gracious, in the way that He leads us so well. Imagine the best leader you've ever had in your life. God is so much better, and so the voice of God will lead you gracefully. The enemy's voice will push you. Imagine somebody trying to, you're walking through the store and someone's constantly putting pressure, trying to hurry you through the lanes. Let me tell you something. God is never in a hurry. And so if you are feeling hurried in your life, that is not the voice of God. The voice of God enlightens you, and the enemy's voice confuses you. Remember, God is not the author of confusion. And so if you are confused about something, it's possible you're listening to the enemy's voice. The voice of God reassures you, and the enemy's voice frightens you. Again, going back to, being worried all the time, or if you're constantly walking in fear, God did not give us a spirit of fear. And so if you are constantly, living in this fear, being weighted down by fear, you are listening to the enemy and not the voice of God, because when you listen to God, He brings you peace. So I pray that these things would encourage you today, would help you, and that you would take time to acknowledge when you are listening to lies, you need to silence those voices, you need to silence those lies and replace them with truth. God bless.